Hey everybody, it's Delta Shiny Zeta here, and welcome to another special ranking video. In this video, we are going to be ranking every single Harvest Moon title. Now, it's all the main series Harvest Moon titles and also the Story of Seasons titles, because the Story of Seasons actually is Harvest Moon, but we're also including Natsume's new Harvest Moon series that they eventually started to make after the split between, Marvelous and them. Even though I know that those are not technically Harvest Moon games, but I'm putting them in here and lumping them together just because I'm going to get a lot of comments saying, hey, you missed these or you missed these, and so on. The other thing too is that we are including the spin-offs, but we are not including the Rune Factory series, and that's because the Rune Factory series is basically a whole series in its own. Yes, it's tied to Harvest Moon, but there's also a lot of titles in it. There's the 4 main ones plus 4 special. 5 is coming out soon, and there's a Frontier as well as what's the other one? The Tides of... oh my gosh, I'm totally drawing a blank. You know what I mean. You get the point. There's a lot of games. Tides of Destiny, I believe. Yes, just remembered. Alright, so with that being said, we're going to start. So I did a lot of research and I found that there are 40 Harvest Moon games. Yes, there are 40 of them. In case you're not familiar with me and what I do in my channel, one of the main things that I do, or one of the main genres that I cover in my channel, are Let's Plays for farming titles. And, what better farming series is there than Harvest Moon? There's probably better games, but in terms of series, and in terms of iconic series for farming, Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons is of course the most iconic. So I've actually played every single game in here that you see right here. I have played them all, at least a little bit. I have played through most of these games here on my channel. You can actually find the link right now actually. I'm going to put a link on the video if you want to go to my particular, the section that has all these different Harvest Moon games. But anyway, let's go ahead and start. But I did want to throw that out there because in case you're wondering, oh, you don't know anything about this game or that game. I know these games pretty damn extensively. Obviously some a lot more than others, but I have a general idea of the entire series as a whole, as well as specific titles. Keep in mind that these are going to be my opinions in the end, although I'm trying to base a lot of different logic in terms of gameplay and features and story. Some have story and just in general. But this is my overall view on what I think as objectively as possible that I can. Okay, here we go. So they're randomized. I'm starting in order just from up here, however they're, randomized. So we're going to start with Harvest Moon Save the Homeland, a title that was released for the PlayStation 2. Save the Homeland was kind of always, I would say, average in general. A lot of people definitely claimed that, Save the Homeland, although it had an interesting concept, it lacked a lot of additional features, and in the end the game felt very bland. It is good for what it does, quote unquote farming, right, what it's supposed to happen, and it definitely has its strong points with certain characters and certain things that you can do, but in general people all the time would say it's average. The other thing is the lack of marriage in this game. You cannot get married in Save the Homeland. You can in the remake of it, which I'll get to in a little bit, but in this one, I don't know, I always personally would put it around the C tier, around there, because while it wasn't bad, it definitely could have been a lot better. Moving on to Harvest Moon 64. Now Harvest Moon 64, if you look everywhere on, just like game reviewers and different websites and threads and forums, Harvest Moon 64 is considered to be the greatest Harvest Moon game of all time by a lot of people. I personally am somewhere around there. I don't know if I would call it the greatest, but it's definitely somewhere up in the top 3 for sure from what I have seen. In general though, it's one of the most iconic games of all time. Yes, it wasn't the first one. Harvest Moon for the Super Nintendo, quote unquote Harvest Moon is what it was called, was of course the first one in the series, and even though that one introduced it to the genre, it wasn't until Harvest Moon 64 that the farming gaming genre actually got revolutionized because of this game. In the end, Harvest Moon 64 made a lot more of an impact than the original one for the Super Nintendo, and for that reason, and just for how great of a game it actually is and what you can do for a game that came out in the Nintendo 64, it's just fantastic and it deserves an S rating. The next one on the list is Harvest Moon Game Boy, and also Harvest Moon Game Boy Color, depending on the version that you had. This game did have 2 versions of it. The original was for the Game Boy, eventually got another version for the Game Boy Color. Identical game, it's just in color. That's the only difference. Harvest Moon Game Boy was also, it was interesting because it was also, definitely the first Harvest Moon game for mobile, basically, your Game Boy, since Super Nintendo was not a mobile console, obviously. But in general, it was pretty good for what it did. A lot of people did typically consider, and I agree with this, that it definitely lacked more things than even the Super Nintendo one, which came out before. In a way, it makes sense. This is the Game Boy, comparing it to Super Nintendo. Not that that should be a strong argument. Regardless, though, I would place it somewhere around the middle for what it was as a game. The future of the Harvest Moon Game Boy games, because there were 2 and 3, definitely did a little bit better in some aspects. Overall, I'm going to put it here along the C tier. Not bad, but it also could have been a lot better, but pretty decent start. The next one is Harvest Moon Boy and Girl. Now, Harvest Moon Boy and Girl is actually pretty much Back to Nature, but you can also play as a girl. The original Back to Nature in Japan, actually you could also play as a girl, because there were basically 2 versions. There was a boy and then the girl version. They didn't start implementing that in North America releases until a little bit later. Iconic titles like Friends of Mineral Town and then more Friends of Mineral Town, you know, where you could have the split, or A Wonderful Life, Another Wonderful Life, and so on and so forth. But not with Back to Nature. So it wasn't until the PSP, the PlayStation Portable, where North America finally got Boy and Girl. In general, I mean, it's basically Back to Nature. You know, just some, you know, I guess upgraded / updated features and, you know, graphics and everything. I'm gonna put this higher where Back to Nature belongs, although in general I would say that it's Back to Nature that really deserves the credit, because this game is basically just that, but, you know, Back to Nature as well. So because of all this, I'm going to go ahead and place this game up here in the, all the way up in the S, because of just the amazing and iconic presence of Back to Nature. So that's what I'm going to do with that. Harvest Moon Tree of Tranquility was released for the Nintendo Wii. It was one of 2, technically 3 games, but 2 standalone games that were released only for the Wii. I mean, if you could even go as far as 4, because I'll get into it in just a little bit. But Tree of Tranquility, it was a big world, definitely. There was a lot to explore in this game. It was just very big and massive, because keep in mind that by this point, the most of what we got in terms of like a big world was A Wonderful Life for the GameCube. And by this point, there weren't necessarily really strong consoles. Yes, there was the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but, you know, in case you don't know, the majority of Harvest Moon titles were released on Nintendo consoles, so they, you know, just didn't have contracts with them or whatever the case may be. I don't know too much about that, but a lot of these were on Nintendo side, and by this point, the Wii was basically the strongest console that Nintendo had. So they were like, you know what, we're going to capitalize on this powerful Wii and actually make an expansive game. And they did. It was expansive and it was great in what it did. Overall, the game got mixed reviews, however. And I would agree with that. As I did a full playthrough of this, I definitely slowly saw some of the issues with this game. The main issues were actually stability issues, as well as the horrendous, let me emphasize, horrendous loading screens. My god, every time you go from point A to point B, you know, to a loading screen, it's like a 15 to 20 second loading screen every single time. Unbelievable. The next game, Animal Parade, improved on that, which I'll get into in just a little bit, but oh gosh, in general, it was a little bit above average. I did admire what the game series was trying to go to be a lot more than just a lot more beyond what Magical Melody was doing, of like, you know, how it would backtrack from A Wonderful Life into more of like a chibi-like cute little graphics, and this one went back to A Wonderful Life's mechanics in a way, so I appreciated that and for what it was doing. In general, I'm going to put it a little bit above average into the B tier, because I think it actually was a little bit above average and definitely an enjoyable experience. The next one is a spin-off. It's Story of Seasons, but it has the Doraemon twist. Doraemon Story of Seasons, and I'm pretty close on the pronunciation there. It's a little difficult to pronounce if you're not familiar with the series, of course. The Doraemon series has... I don't know the specifics too much about that, but I know that, you know, it actually has an anime and so on and so forth. So it's an own series in itself. So this game was a collaboration between Doraemon and Story of Seasons. It's a relatively newer game. It came out in 2019 for the Nintendo Switch. And to be honest, it was pretty damn good. It was a good game. It had a lot of really things going on for it. And overall, the whole tone of the game is a very, like, very chill, laid back nature kind of thing. I mean, not that Harvest Moon games are not. In general, they are. But some are a lot more than others. And this one is definitely one that had that really big tone, and I really appreciated that. There's also a lot to do. Sometimes it can get a little complicated with just how much there actually is to do. Although I do not appreciate the hour to hour and a half opening segment of the game. That was ridiculous. Seriously, it takes like a little over an hour so you can actually start playing this game, from when you first, launch the game to when you can actually move on to the gameplay. Lots of cutscenes, really long intro. The story is also really good. It actually does have a story, and I'm not going to be spoiling stories in here. But just know, overall, it was a pretty damn good game. I'm thinking of somewhere around here or there, but it's a little difficult to know. I think I'm going to go with A, actually. I think it really is that good of a game. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it, because you will enjoy it. Next one is Harvest Moon Back to Nature. I'm not going to spend too much time talking on about this one, because I talked about it a couple of times in Boy and Girl. Back to Nature came out after 64, and the graphics are very similar to 64. But characters have different occupations and just, different families even. Kind of weird if you got so used to 64 and then you play Back to Nature, you're like, what the heck? Like, these people are related? These people were freaking, like, marrying each other in last game. It's kind of weird, to be honest. But as a game itself, it's honestly very, very good. It's one of the better Harvest Moon games ever in history. It really tried to do what 64 used and expand on it. In some ways it expanded on it, but in other ways it didn't, which is why overall I think Harvest Moon 64 is still better as a game overall. 64 also runs much smoother than Back to Nature. Back to Nature has like this ongoing kind of laggy feeling to it. 64 is very smooth, so, But with all that, it definitely deserves S. The next one is Harvest Moon DS Cute. In case you're not familiar with this game, it's basically Harvest Moon DS, but it's the girl version of it. Harvest Moon DS Cute and DS in general were pretty average to a little bit above average in general. That's where most people have an opinion on this game around there. I will say that it definitely tried to use some touchscreen mechanics, because it was the first DS title to be released. Well, DS, but I'm talking about DS Cute now, I'm going to basically group them together. It definitely could have also, used the DS to better capabilities. I'm not saying to move only with the stylus. We'll get to that game in just a little bit, because I see it coming up soon. But just know that as a game in general, people appreciate it for what it was, and what Marvelous was attempting to use the DS for, and to show off the capability of the DS. So I'm going to put it right there. The next one, though, oh boy. Harvest Moon Island of Happiness. Oh, where do we even begin, people? Where do we even begin? I did a playthrough of this game, and through that playthrough, I was definitely trying to be as positive as possible, and I think I actually was. But my god, it's because, if I just bash on a game when I'm playing through it, people are not going to be attracted to that. They're going to be like, why are you even playing this game? Seriously. But now that I'm not doing a playthrough of it, I'll be straight up, and honest. It's bad. This is a bad game. The main reason why this game is so bad is because you can't use the DS buttons of moving, like, at all in this game. You seriously can't. If you want to move your character anywhere, even the simplest, motion which you would normally just use the stick and move, like that way, you can't. You have to put the stylus and literally move that way, and if you want to move down, you move down. You gotta move everywhere. You have to use the stylus. The stylus always has to be touching the screen and moving wherever you want to go, which is ridiculous. If you want to pick up stuff, you don't press the A button like a regular Harvest Moon. You tap on the item on the screen, but your character has to be close enough to the item so you can pick it up. It's insane. It's such a nuisance. Getting even from your house to the local shop is a pain in the ass because of that, and it's so ridiculous. It's really annoying. I'm sorry, but if you're a fan of it, it's cool that it was iconic and nostalgic to you, but let's be honest, it was not good. It was really bad. Next one is Innocent Life. Innocent Life was Harvest Moon with a futuristic take on it. It was released for the PSP and also for the PS2. And in general, it was okay for what it was doing. It definitely showed us, the potential of a Harvest Moon game that was not the old school, just regular tools and regular farming and regular, taking care of livestock and stuff. It was cool, but it just lacked, I don't even know how to explain this, but it just lacked stuff. It lacked features. It lacked something that just didn't seem well polished quality like. And in general, people would probably say it's going to be around here. I would argue it could go up to here because it was kind of interesting in some ways, but I'm going to place it in C, right around the solid middle. Next one is Harvest Moon DS. I'm not going to talk about this too much. DS is the boy version that came out first. DS Cute is the girl version that came out after. Pretty similar. Next one is Harvest Moon One World. Harvest Moon One World is this first game here on this list that came up that is Natsume's game. There's a couple here on this list which we'll get to in just a little bit, but everybody knows that Natsume's Harvest Moon series has been absolute trash in general ever since the split between Marvelous and Natsume. I played through the whole game of One World in general, and to be honest, I don't think it's a bad game. I don't think it's bad like the other Natsume games, which we'll get into in just a little bit. In general though, I can't place this higher than a C, I would say. And that's being very generous. A lot of people will probably put D on this. I'm going to put C because I think it actually is the beginning of something that can lead to good things in the future. But that's if Natsume listens to what people are saying about what they like, about what they don't like about some other games that we'll get to in just a little bit. So if they follow correctly, Natsume has the potential of actually making some pretty decent Harvest Moon games that can eventually be up here in B. I don't think they'll ever get to an S ranked ever. There's no way, but I'm putting it there. The next one is Another Wonderful Life. Okay, so Another Wonderful Life, as well as A Wonderful Life, they both were released for the GameCube. So I'll kind of be talking, about these at the same time, essentially. But Another Wonderful Life, to be honest, was a very solid game. It's one of the only Harvest Moon games in general, actually I think the only one, that really tries to depict farming and taking care of animals and everything as how it is in real life. As giving a couple of examples, in most Harvest Moon games, you get a cow, they become an adult. You milk the cow, they give you milk every single day until they're alive. That's not how real life works. A cow doesn't just give you milk every single freaking day of the rest of your life. No. How does that work? They have to give birth. They give birth and then they give milk for a certain amount of time after. Also, crops can only be like watered 1 square at a time. There's no like charging the watering can and then all 9 squares. As convenient as that is, it's also fake. Obviously they're video games, so there's supposed to be a sense of fakeness, but it was a very interesting twist that they did stuff like this. You also don't always magically wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning, unless you have an alarm clock item. So just stuff like that, it's very realistic in what it tried to do. Overall, great game though. I'm putting in an A, both this one plus A Wonderful Life, because of what they actually did. In general, it's also just one huge area. There's no loading screens going from one point of the valley to the next part of the valley. It's one huge area. It's really fantastic, honestly, for what it was doing. And I really recommend this if you want to try a Harvest Moon game that's very different, but not bad. It's actually a good difference. So I'm going to put this as high as A, because I think A Wonderful Life really deserves that spot. The next one is Harvest Moon 3D: A New Beginning. Now, I'll start by saying that, around the time when Harvest Moon games were being released for the DS, not 3DS, the DS, is when a lot of people started to see a lack in quality in Harvest Moon games. And you'll see in general, just by seeing this, the S-rank games, this one again doesn't really count, but the S-rank games and the A games, aside from Doraemon, they're older games. They're older games, and that makes sense because, again, people were saying that there was a lack in quality, that Harvest Moon wasn't the same anymore. I honestly feel like those comments were from a lot of people that didn't really play a lot of the newer games, because while yes, there's some freaking awful games, looking at you, in the DS era and beyond, there's also some really good ones. If you actually take your time to invest, or to invest your time in a game, you might appreciate the game a heck of a lot more. Harvest Moon 3D: A New Beginning is a great example of this. The game is actually really freaking good. It's really good in terms of the customizing features, not just your house and everything, but you can really customize the entire town and move everything around. There's some elements of Animal Crossing mixed in there that I can see sometimes, but the characters were great, all the different features were great, the controls were not clunky or bad for a 3DS game. It was great, and I think this actually deserves as high as an A, to be honest. If you have not played 3D: A New Beginning, play it, because it's really good. Moving on to a not-so-good 3DS game. Oh god, I don't even want to talk about this. Oh gosh, The Lost Valley deserves, obviously, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. If you played The Lost Valley, you know what? You know why. what the heck was Natsume doing? So the Lost Valley was the first game that Natsume made since the split. Obviously we knew it was not going to be good because the developers, well, all this crap over here aside from One World was marvelous. Seriously. Natsume didn't know anything about developing Harvest Moon games, they published them. They tried it and they tried to implement some kind of Minecraft mechanic as well. It didn't, no. It didn't work. Let's just say it did not work at all. Really bad game. I went through torture when I played this game. I still have not played on the channel, and sometimes I'm like, will I ever even play this garbage game? I have no clue. I mean, I played this one. I don't know. Spin-off game, Return to Popo LaCroix, A Story of Seasons Fairy Tale. This one has RPG elements mixed in there. It's actually more of an RPG than farming game. In general, it's a pretty average game. It's cool for what it does. It's actually a good story, I'll give it that. But in terms of RPG elements, it's pretty simplistic. It's really just move to an enemy, attack, move to an enemy, attack. Pretty basic, but there are difficulties if you want to spice it up. You can go into hard mode. In general, though, I can't see this being more than above average. It's a decent game. Next one is Grand Bazaar. Grand Bazaar actually was pretty good for the DS. Now, it was the fourth title, not counting like DS, DSQ difference. I'm just counting that as one game, DS. It was the fourth title for the DS, fourth main series title to be released for the DS after DS, Island of Happiness, Sunshine Islands, Grand Bazaar. So by this point, they definitely learned a lot about the great things about DS and Sunshine Islands and the terrible things about Island of Happiness to really try to make a great solidified DS Harvest Moon game, and I think they succeeded. It's actually really good, it's fun. The Bazaar feature was a really nice twist to make the game unique. It's funny that you can also move around and jump everywhere, like that's unheard of in Harvest Moon games, but yeah, it's actually a good game. I'll give it a B, pretty damn good. Next one is Animal Parade. So, oh gosh, Animal Parade. Animal Parade, basically just think of Tree of Tranquility, but better. It really tried to do as much of improving from Tree of Tranquility's criticism as possible. It's still a very large, expansive world. There's an animal parade. As you can see, there's a lot of different animals that are not the typical farm animals because that's a feature of the game. Great characters, just great world, great setting. Overall, fantastic in many ways. It definitely improved on the loading screens. It didn't fully heal that, problem, but it improved on it. In general, it's a step above Tree of Tranquility, and it is one of the better Harvest Moon titles, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, so I'm going to put that in A. The next one is Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. Friends of Mineral Town, sorry. This one, it's basically Friends of Mineral Town, but for the Switch, updated graphics and everything. So a lot of people, especially those that, are, I guess you can say, clouded with nostalgia, would say that the better one is definitely the original one. And I don't know, you can make arguments here and there. Like, in general, I think it's a very faithful reimagining of the game. And there's a lot of people that would take issue to that comment I just made, and I don't know why. Like, I don't know, a lot of the time, people just tend to, live in the past, and you're like, oh, this thing was iconic, so they refuse to accept something different, a reimagining of something. If you haven't played this game, and you're criticizing the crap out of it, that it's not as good as the original, I'm just going to be honest and say you really have no room to talk. Please play the game first and make your assumption. It's actually really good. It's pretty much, see, in my opinion, it's a faithful reimagining of the game. And if Friends of Mineral Town / Back to Nature make it up here, then this game deserves to be up here because it's basically the same game, just with updated graphics. I know people also didn't like the graphics because they were like small character chibi-like characters, but to be honest, that was fine for a lot of other people. I think in general it was a great game. It was great for what it did, and it deserves to be in the same ranking as the original Friends of Mineral Town and Back to Nature. The next one is Tale of Two Towns. This one, it was good. I can't say it was great. And I'm not talking here because I'm really trying to collect my thoughts here before I mention some stuff, but it's interesting how a lot of the critiques that this game got was that, the concept of it is you choose a town. As it says, a tale of two towns. You choose one of the two towns because you get, better deals in that town. You choose the farming aspect or the ranching aspect. It's that simple. You pick one of those and then you go with it. However, both towns kind of like hate each other, and some of the reviews and comments that this game was getting was, it's kind of hard to love a game that's built on so much hate from people, like against one another, you know? It was a little intriguing in some ways, but in general, I can't really say that it was definitely up here at all. I'm thinking B, but in some ways it can drop down to C, but I think it was actually pretty good for what it was doing, so I'm going to put it right there. Let's go with that. Pioneers of Olive Town for the Nintendo Switch, the newest title in this series. So, Pioneers of Olive Town, I did a whole playthrough of the game, over 50 episodes long, of 30 minutes each, so that's over 25 hours built into the game. And from what I was able to get, and here's the thing, if this game didn't have any updates, I would actually put it at B. I would not put it higher than that. Marvelous has gotten feedback and actually, you know, has been making updates and patches to the game in general, especially the whole stupid maker thing, that only one item per maker. Now they're actually expanding on that and making it multiple, kind of like my time at Porsche. So a lot better of a game in general, great aspects, fantastic that they actually put a leveling system in this game, how you have to level up your skills. I think it was a fantastic twist to the story of Season Series, something that we haven't really seen before in Harvest Moon. Aside from a couple minor things in a couple other games, but not anything like this. I think it was great. Again, it would be B, but with the updates and patches, I think it's been being bumped up to an A, because it did actually do a lot of great things. Next one is Sunshine Islands. Sunshine Islands has the same characters, same cast from Island of Happiness, but it does what Island of Happiness does, but better in basically every single way. I'm not going to say the game is great, but it's good. It's overall good. It's a solid game. A little bit above average is what people would say. I think even bumping it up to C is pretty damn good, I would say, because again, it expanded on Island of Happiness. You don't have to use only the stylus to move. You can actually move your damn character with a control pad thing, you know. So overall, it's an average game. Some people might want to bump it up to here. I mean, you know, there's always personal opinion on this. I'm gonna put it in C. Next one is Mad Dash. Mad Dash is obviously a spin-off. It's not really a Harvest Moon game. It's more of like, it's like a mini game kind of thing, but there are still levels, you know. But I don't know, it's hard to really truly judge this thing. It's a game by Natsume, not Marvelous, so it was, you know, it came out for the Switch and PlayStation 4 and I think Steam as well. A little bit after Light of Hope came out. I really can't see this thing being, I don't know, anything higher than, I would probably say D. It doesn't deserve like a terrible game thing, but I'll put D. I'll put D there. A Wonderful Life, I don't need to talk about this anymore. I put another Wonderful Life here, so I'm putting a Wonderful Life here as well. They're A games. They're solid games. Highly recommend them. Next up is Friends of Mineral Town. Oh boy. So what do I do with this? Obviously, up here. So, in case you don't know, Friends of Mineral Town was a remake of Back to Nature. It's the same world, it's the same characters, it's just Game Boy Advance, PlayStation 1. That simple. So this one's a remake of Back to Nature, and then this one was a remaster of this one. So it's, even Marvelous knows just how iconic the Back to Nature / Friends of Mineral Town series has been, to the point that they remade it again. Like, that's ridiculous, right? But yeah, great games. Frantic Farming. Frantic Farming is another puzzle game. It's a spin-off. It came out for the DS. To be honest, it's pretty fun. It's a fun game. Huge improvement over the previous puzzle game in the DS, which we'll get to in just a little bit because that game is awful. But this one, actually, to be honest, is pretty solid. I'm going to say it goes to C. If you want to see some videos of it, I also do have a very, very small playthrough of the game, just 2 episodes long. One character storyline, you know, I played through it. But yeah, solid for what it does. Magical Melody. Magical Melody is actually really freaking good. The main premise of the game is collecting those 100 notes. It's a lot of work, but you really only need 50 to beat the game. But in general, there's a lot to do in this game, and it's very, I don't know, like, see, and that's the same thing that people love about 64. Some Harvest Moon games get a lot of criticism for, like, eventually being boring because there's not anything to do anymore, which is fair. It's a fair argument. It'll get boring. Games like 64, Friends of Mineral Town, Back to Nature, and Magical Melody are definitely games that you're not ever going to find anything not to do. You're always going to find something. Also, Pioneers Volatile is like that too. There's always stuff to do in that game. So, this game actually deserves up to an A, because it really is that good of a game, I would say. So I highly recommend this one as well too if you have not played it. The next one is Harvest Moon My Little Shop. This one is less of an emphasis on farming, more of managing a shop, but there's also some farming in it. It's a little cute WiiWare title. It never came out like a physical version of a Wii because it was not that big of a game. I would say it's an average title, but it is fun in some ways. I'm going to put it right here because it's a great way to just pass the time, but I can't put this, to being a good game at all. It was just average. Next one is Hero of Leaf. Okay. This game, it's basically an improved version of Save the Homeland. I think it's better than Save the Homeland in every way. In case you don't know, it's pretty much the same like world, atmosphere, whatever you want to call it. It's just different. You can actually get married. There's more mechanics introduced in the game, and there's a little bit more to it. I think it deserves B because it was actually pretty solid in what it was doing, so I'll go with that. The next ones, okay, they're coming back to back. It's Harvest Moon Game Boy 2 and Harvest Moon Game Boy 3. I put the original Game Boy in C, and both of these, I would say, improved over the original Game Boy. In some aspects, you could actually choose either dimension speed, you could choose boy and girl from in these Game Boy titles, and they, I'm not going to get too specific with certain elements. All you know is they're Game Boy titles. They're supposed to be simplistic for what they do, but they're fun. They're overall fun. From the 3, and this is where people have a lot of controversy, I think 2 was the better one. I will put 2 here, and I will put 3 here in C. You can mix and match here. These 3 games belong somewhere in the C to B range in general. I'm going to put them like that. Next one is Harvest Moon, Super Nintendo. So, okay. Obviously, it was the first game ever. It doesn't have too many features to it because it was so simplistic. But it was iconic. It started the series. Not as revolutionary as 64, like what I was saying before. But it did have some influence, Because of that, I think it definitely deserves a higher than average grade. In general, when we look at it now and, just see, like if somebody that has no idea, that this game existed or were to play it now, they would probably put it average to below average because it's missing a lot. But that's not a fair judgment of the game because the game came out, at that time in Super Nintendo. I think it deserves B. I think it's actually great for what it did at the time, and it really, started the entire series, so it deserves that. Hometown Story. Hometown Story is similar to My Little Shop in some ways, mainly because of the fact that it's more of a running a store management. But it did not get good ratings because it was kind of dull, kind of boring in some ways. I'm going to place this down in D. It's sad to say that I think a WiiWare title did better in performance than Hometown Story, but I'm putting it there. Light of Hope. Okay. Out of every game in the entire Harvest Moon series right now, this is the game that I understand the least in terms of why people hate on it so much. Seriously. Like, yes, it's Natsume's title, but I feel that, and I guess I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek. There's a couple titles coming up, Seeds of Memories and Skytree Village, that were also made by Natsume after the split, and those 2 games came out before Light of Hope, as well as The Lost Valley. Those 3 games were bad games. And I feel that by that point, people already had an assumption of Natsume, like, okay, all the creature titles are trash. So then when they released Light of Hope, an average game, not a bad game, an average game, people dumped on it, sometimes without even giving it some time to really experiment the game. Light of Hope is not a bad game. I don't think it's a bad game. I played through the whole thing, and to be honest, it was pretty damn enjoyable in some ways. I think One World is a little bit better, but I also think that this thing is like, basically think of this as like a low C tier, this thing is like high C tier. These 2 games have been the 2 newest titles released by Natsume since the split, And the fact that they're both better than the garbage that we saw in the Lost Valley, as well as 2 titles coming up here, shows that they're improving a little bit. I'm not saying they're marvelous. They're not marvelous games. They're just overall better. But just keep that in mind, you know? Don't just outright bash this game if you haven't played it. Give it a chance. You'll see it's not terrible. Next one is Seeds of Memories. Now, this one is bad. It's not the Lost Valley bad, but it's pretty damn bad. I'm going to put this into D. It came out for iOS and Android. Pretty dull life. Characters are just lifeless there. Not really giving them personalities and shit. It was... Yeah, it lacked a lot. It wasn't the garbage of the Lost Valley, but it's some garbage still. More Friends of Mineral Town. I'm putting it up here alongside Friends of Mineral Town, obviously, because they deserve to be paired together. Puzzle to Harvest Moon. This is terrible. This game is so boring. You will get bored from playing this game in 10 minutes. I swear to God. I swear. Frantic Farming. Okay. Frantic Farming was also released for the DS after Puzzle to Harvest Moon, and it was another puzzle game. And when it was being developed, people were like, oh my god, did Marvelous / Natsume not learn anything? Actually, it was Natsume that worked on these two. Did Natsume not learn anything? They actually did, because they did make a pretty decent, fun game in Frantic Farming. This thing is awful, though. This thing is absolutely awful. I do not recommend this to anyone. Next one is Skytree Village. Oh, Skytree Village. Why do you do this to me? It's either D or E. It's bad. It came out for the 3DS. It came out after the Lost Valley and after Seeds of Memories. And they still didn't learn their lesson. It wasn't until Light of Hope when they learned their lesson. This game is bad. In some ways, it could be even considered worse than Seeds of Memories. I don't know, but I'm putting it here because it really is that bad of a game, okay? Like, seriously, don't play this game. Don't play it. Story of Seasons. And then Trio of Towns. So Story of Seasons was the first game that Marvelous made since the split. It was actually a pretty damn good entry to the series. I'm going to put it up here. It was really that good. A lot of us were shocked, but also not shocked, because like they were developing Harvest Moon games all these years. It wasn't Natsume. But yeah, solid game. Very solid. Good stuff to do. I have not played this game on my channel. I really should. Last one, Trio of Towns. Okay. Trio of Towns. I'll just tell you right now. I think it's probably the most... underrated isn't the word, because people know that the game is good, but people don't realize how good the game actually is. Here's why. Trio of Towns, and I found this in so many forums and threads everywhere, and it was interesting that a lot of people actually shared the same mindset I had too, and I was like, oh god, oh good, I'm not alone with this. I wasn't crazy. So if you look at the S tiers, you'll see every game here, aside from... Well, I mean, this is a remake, once again, or a bundle together, a collection, and this is a remake. But 64, Back to Nature, and Friends of Mineral Town are the S ranks. People commonly consider those three some of the greatest Harvest Moon games of all time, alongside sometimes you hear things like A Wonderful Life and Animal Parade, and maybe Pioneers of Olive Town now too, I don't know how that's gonna go, and Magical Melody, which is why they're all up here. Trio of Towns is the only S-ranked game that is a modern Harvest Moon game. I'm putting it there. Some people might put it A, some might put it as low as B. I don't think anyone in their right mind would ever put this game below B. But my god, is this game fantastic. Like, Jesus Christ. When I was playing through this game, and I did 100 episodes of this series, seriously, I did 100 episodes. When I played through this game, I realized, I was like, Marvelous, this is your second game since the split, and you fucking nailed it. Like, what the heck? Seriously. Like, I know that, you know, a lot of people probably haven't played this one if they only had a Switch, and they think this thing is amazing. This game is basically better than Pioneers of Olive Town. Like, seriously, as good as Pioneers is, I think this game is actually better. Like, oh my god. I can't explain to you just how much, but there's basically 3 towns, as it says Trio of Towns. But you don't, like, choose. You unlock more towns as you go. You start the one, then the second, and the third. There's a lot of people. There's so much to do. There's so much to forage, and fishing is not bad in this game, and the mining element is so simple in this game. The relationships of people is great. There's a lot of life between the cutscenes are so nice and beautiful. It's everything you want to ask for about a modern Harvest Moon game. If you haven't played this game and are one of those people that just criticizes modern Harvest Moon games and are like, oh, just play Stardew Valley, please play Trio of Towns and get a true judgment on this, because this thing is freaking great. Other than that though, that's the end of this video. So as always, feel free to leave comments if you agree or disagree with stuff. I'm probably going to get a lot of comments saying that you disagree with certain placements, which is fine. In the end, it's everyone's opinions, but this is a nice general overview. You can probably move things up or down one level, maybe 2 levels at most, but it's pretty general for what it does. So yeah, before I end this video, as always, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a great day.